The chicken was dry. Claire always cooked it that way on purpose, I think. She knew I had dentures. I chewed slowly, carefully, while she watched from across the table, smiling too wide for comfort. David barely looked up from his phone. My only son, my only family, really. Mom, he said suddenly, breaking the silence, Claire and I have been talking. I set my fork down. That phrase "we've been talking" never led anywhere good, not from him, not since his father died. Claire leaned forward like a snake preparing to strike. We're worried about you, she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. You've been forgetful. I blinked. I haven't forgotten a single thing except what it felt like to be respected in this house. She laughed, not kindly. David glanced at her, then back at me. It's just we think it's time you considered assisted living, a real facility, somewhere with people your age. You know, before something happens. I stared at him, my own son, the boy I raised while working double shifts, who used to cry for me in the night, who I held through fevers and bullies and first heartbreaks. Now he was pushing me out of the home I gave him. I looked around. My late husband built the porch with his hands. The fireplace mantel still held my wedding photo. And they wanted me to vanish into a room with linoleum floors and strangers. You're talking like I'm already dead, I said. Claire shook her head, sipping her wine. We're trying to help. No, they weren't. They wanted the house to themselves. They wanted their version of peace, the kind that comes from erasing the people who remind them of their selfishness. I stood up. Thank you for dinner, I said, my voice steady, but I think I'll be going now. The air outside was cold, sharp, but I breathed it in like medicine. That night, back in my little bedroom, still technically mine, though Claire had repainted it a harsh gray, didn't cry. I didn't even scream. I just sat on the edge of the bed and let my hands rest in my lap. For the first time, I saw things clearly. They didn't love me, not really, not anymore. I was an obligation, a monthly expense, a woman to tolerate until they could box me up and ship me off. Maybe they'd visit me once a year on holidays, out of guilt. Maybe not at all. The house wasn't mine anymore. I'd signed it over to David 2 years ago, thinking it would make his life easier after I passed. That was the word they used, like I was just air fading into nothing. But I wasn't dead yet. I reached into the nightstand and pulled out a blank sheet of paper. My hands trembled, but not from weakness, from purpose. I hadn't written anything important in years, not since my husband died. But this letter wouldn't be for a birthday, or a thank you note. No, this one would be my exit. I started with his name, just that. David. The pen hovered. What do you say to a son who treats you like furniture, like background noise? I didn't know, but I would find the words, somehow, because I wasn't going to let them decide how my story ended. They thought I'd never leave. They thought I had nowhere to go, that I was weak, powerless, but they were wrong, dead wrong. What kind of mother plans to disappear? If you've ever been treated like a burden when all you ever gave was love, like, comment, and subscribe. Because sometimes the quietest goodbyes are the ones that echo the loudest. Let's walk toward the story. I stared at the paper the next morning, like it was some kind of battlefield. The pen sat in my hand, steady now. My coffee had gone cold. I didn't notice. My mind was too loud. David. I wrote again. And then the words came like a quiet flood. You once asked me why I always sat by the window after Dad died. You thought I was waiting for something. I wasn't. I was grieving. And in that grief, I watched you change. You used to bring me cups of tea. You used to hug me just because. Then Claire came along. And slowly, you forgot who I was. You didn't marry a woman. You married a mirror that only reflects what she wants to see. I paused. My chest ached, but it wasn't pain, it was release. I wasn't angry. Not really. Not anymore. I was awake. I folded the letter halfway, then reopened it. No, not done yet. Signed over the house because I trusted you. Because I thought you'd honor it. I thought you'd remember the memories this roof held. But now I sit just a structure to you, a thing to control, and me, just another thing to move out of the way. So here's what's going to happen. I'm leaving. You won't find me. You won't hear from me. And the next time you walk into this house, it will feel different. Because for the first time, it will be truly empty. Empty of the woman who made it a home. Goodbye, David. May silence teach you what my voice never could. I signed it with my full name, my maiden name, a name I hadn't used since 1979. I sealed the envelope and wrote for David on the front. By noon, I'd already called the lawyer. My estate. Gone. Rewritten. Anything left was no longer his. I didn't need much to live on. I needed peace more than possessions. The lawyer was surprised, but not judgmental. You're doing what's best for you, she said. I almost cried at that. I booked a moving truck, not for everything, just the things that mattered. My old typewriter, a photo album, my mother's locket, the rest. Let them keep it, let them sell it, let them argue about what I left behind. The bank was next. Every penny in the shared account, transferred, a new account, new name, new start. Then came the storage unit. I packed the few boxes I had left, drove myself there, and locked them away. Safe, waiting, just like I had been, that night. As the house slept, I stood in the kitchen and taped the envelope to the fridge, centered, visible, cold against the metal. Would see it, he would read it, and when he did, there would be no screaming match, no bargaining, no fake apologies, just silence. I walked back to my room, took one final look at the bed, where I dreamed of a peaceful life surrounded by love. That dream had died long ago, I just hadn't buried it yet. I folded the extra blankets, dusted the mirror, and whispered goodbye to the woman I used to be. I wasn't running away. I was walking out, on my terms, and I didn't look back. Can a letter do more damage than a storm? I walked through each room of the house slowly, touching everything I could one last time. The banister David used to slide down it in his socks. Got a splinter once, and cried for 2 hours. I kissed his finger, put a band-aid on it, and told him brave boys still cry. The den where my husband read to me every Sunday. He had a way with voices. Even made Shakespeare sound like a bedtime story. The kitchen, my kitchen. That's where I taught David to bake banana bread. He never liked to clean up, but he loved licking the bowl. And now, Claire didn't let messes happen. I took only the things that held meaning. My wedding photo, a Bible with my mother's handwriting in the margins, a wind chime my granddaughter made before she moved away and forgot my name. I opened a drawer and found the apron I used for every Thanksgiving. It still smelled like cinnamon. I folded it gently and placed it into my single suitcase. I wasn't leaving behind junk. I was leaving behind a museum of love they no longer walked through. Ghosts lived here now, not mine, theirs, and I was done haunting. The house wasn't mine anymore, but it would remember me. I carried my bag to the front door and paused, taking in the silence. Not a sound from upstairs. Claire usually slept with a sound machine, something to block out the real world. Fitting. I taped the letter to the fridge earlier, but something about it didn't sit right. Too formal, too clean. So I took it down and added one more line with shaking hands. You didn't lose me, David. You gave me away. Then I retaped it, this time slightly crooked, like a wound. I looked around one last time. The living room light flickered. Probably that bulb I asked David to change 2 months ago. He said he'd get to it. He never did. I stepped outside, locked the door behind me, and I didn't bring the key. I left it under the mat right where I knew they wouldn't look until it was too late. The stars above looked different that night, like they knew something had shifted. I sat in my old sedan, hands trembling, but not from fear, from power, and as I turned the key in the ignition, a strange calm washed over me. People think starting over feels like jumping off a cliff, but to me, it felt like floating. Would he even care enough to read it? The road stretched out like a quiet promise. No headlights behind me, no calls, no guilt. I drove through the night with nothing but the sound of tires on asphalt and a worn-out CD playing. Old folk songs, songs my husband once sang under his breath while fixing the roof, songs David used to roll his eyes at. The farther I got from that house, the more I felt my lungs expand. 2 hours later, I pulled into a long-forgotten driveway in the woods. The cabin sat there like it had been waiting for me all these years, still standing, weathered, solid. My aunt had left it to me before she passed. David didn't know it existed. I stepped out of the car. Gravel crunched under my shoes. The cold air bit my cheeks. But I didn't care. I was breathing something new, freedom. Maybe. I unlocked the door with a rusted key and stepped inside. Dust floated in the air like whispers, but it smelled of cedar and safety. The furniture was old but familiar. My aunt never liked change. A quilt still rested on the couch. I touched it gently, as if she was still there. I set down my suitcase and turned on a lamp. The light flickered once, then steadied, and in that moment, I felt it. I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. I made tea with a kettle that barely whistled and curled up in the old rocking chair near the fireplace. No one told me to move. No one sighed when I cleared my throat. No one corrected how I held the mug. For the first time in years, I didn't have to shrink to fit someone else's comfort. I stared out the window at the trees. They stood tall, even when the wind tried to bend them. Maybe I could do the same. The cabin had no internet, no TV, just silence. I opened a small notebook I found in the kitchen drawer. My aunt had started it, but never finished. On the first page, she'd written, "If you're reading this, it means you're still here, and that's enough." I smiled. Maybe this place was more than a cabin. Maybe it was a second chance. I added my own line beneath hers. Being here means I finally chose me. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, but I felt warm. I didn't need anyone to validate my existence. Not anymore. That night, I fell asleep, without taking a pill, without worrying about walking too loudly, without bracing for Claire's snide remarks or David's silence. I slept like a woman who had finally let go of the weight she wasn't meant to carry. What if they call the police? He must have walked into the kitchen the next morning, bleary-eyed and barefoot, expecting pancakes or maybe another passive day of pretending I didn't exist. Instead, he found the letter. I pictured David reading it with his mouth slightly open, brow furrowed, trying to make sense of the words. Claire probably hovered behind him, arms crossed, confused why the coffee wasn't made. He'd read it twice, maybe 3 times, and then it would hit him really. Hit him. I was gone. No drama, no fight, no warning. I'd vanished, but not quietly. Wouldn't find my clothes, my toiletries, not even my toothbrush. Every trace of me, wiped clean, except the letter. That's what I wanted. For him to feel my absence, for the house to feel colder without me humming in the hallway, or folding their laundry without being asked. Then the second blow would come. The bank account. I imagined him driving down there, all puffed up with urgency, only to hear the truth. His name had been removed weeks ago, every cent gone, moved to a private account under a name he didn't recognize, and the will. The lawyer had already delivered the updated version by email. No inheritance, no power, nothing. Just a house with echoes and a fridge door still holding, a letter with his mother's handwriting. He called, of course, 6 times that morning, then 10 more throughout the day. Each voicemail sounded different. The first few were angry, short, demanding, "Call me back. This isn't funny." Then came confusion. "Mom, where are you? Did someone take you? Are you okay?" And finally, fear. "Please, just tell me you're safe." I turned the phone off, not because I hated him, but because I wanted him to sit in that silence, to face what he'd ignored for years. Claire left a message too. "I don't know what your game is, but if you think this is going to make us beg, you're wrong." She always thought everything was a game, but this wasn't revenge, it was survival. I didn't want them ruined. I just wanted them to see what it felt like to be discarded, overlooked, taken for granted until you disappear and know. One knows what to do with the hole you leave behind. I'd left one thing in the bank's safety deposit box for them to find. A photograph. Me, on a plane, smiling. That photo would haunt them more than any word I could write. Because I looked happy, not in pain, not bitter. Just free. What happens when control slips through your fingers? The voicemails didn't stop. Every morning, I'd power on the phone for just a moment to check for emergencies, then silence it again. Each time, the numbers had grown. David, Claire, even an unknown number that turned out to be Claire's mother. She never once said a kind word to me at Christmas, but now she suddenly just wanted to make sure I was okay. I deleted every message. Then one came that made my hand pause over the delete button. David's voice cracked. "Mom, please." Claire's crying. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. We just thought you'd never actually leave." I stared at the wall for a long time. They thought I wouldn't leave, that I didn't have it in me, that I needed them more than they needed me, that I would just stay and swallow the hurt, spoonful by spoonful, until it buried me. But they were wrong. I powered the phone off again. Out the window, snow had begun to fall. Soft, quiet flakes. The kind that make the world feel brand new. I made soup, lit a candle, put on one of my husband's old records. David's voice could wait. I wrote in my journal late into the night, January 14th. Claire called me needy 2 months ago when I asked if I could come to dinner more often. She said they were adjusting to their space. I had no space, just a room they didn't knock on. January 15th. David asked me once if I'd ever be happy again after Dad died. I said yes, but I was lying. Until now, that the fire crackled softly beside me. I sat in a rocking chair that didn't judge how many times I shifted or coughed. There was no one to glare at me, no one to say I was interrupting their show or hovering in the kitchen. I was alone, and I was healing. Each letter from Claire's side of the family felt more like damage control than care. Just let us know what you need. We're all a little worried. Worried about what? That I'd embarrass them. That I'd tell people what had really happened. That I'd speak up. Well, maybe I would. Maybe silence wasn't enough. But not yet. Not now. First, I had to finish becoming the woman they never thought I could be. I closed my journal and smiled at the fire. I was still here, still breathing, still writing. Do regrets always arrive too late? The DMV was quiet that day. An older woman processed my paperwork with kind eyes. Going back to your maiden name. Huh? She asked casually. I nodded. Feels right. She smiled. Fresh start. I smiled back, but didn't answer. Some things don't need words. The name on my new ID felt strange in my hands at first. Not because it was foreign, but because it was mine. My real name, the one I left behind when I became someone's wife, then someone's mother, then someone's shadow. That night, I enrolled in a watercolor class at the local rec center, just something to do. I showed up with a blank canvas and shaking hands, but the teacher, a man named Lou with a white beard and ink-stained fingers, welcomed me like I belonged. The first stroke I made was crooked and pale, but I didn't stop. For once, I wasn't being watched, judged, dismissed. Nobody in that room knew me as David's mom, or the quiet old lady who lived in the back room. They just knew me as the woman who liked painting sunrises, and that was enough. One morning, I saw my face in a news article posted by the local station. A missing persons report. Elderly woman vanishes from family home. Son pleads for help. The photo they used was 5 years old. My smile looked forced. My eyes, dim. I didn't recognize her. The article quoted David. We're just so worried. She's vulnerable. She needs help. Vulnerable. I scoffed and sipped my tea. No, David, I wasn't vulnerable. I was invisible. Until I left. The comments section was full of strangers arguing. She probably ran away from abuse. Or maybe she's just old and confused. Looks like the son's trying to cover something up. None of them knew the truth, and that was the beauty of it. Because I didn't owe anyone the truth anymore. A week later, Lou from the art class asked if I'd like to join a few people for coffee afterward. I almost said no. Then I realized I didn't have to hide. I wasn't a secret. So I said yes. We talked about art and music and gardening. They asked about my life, and I gave them pieces of it, not the broken parts, just enough to feel like myself again. They didn't know who I used to be, but they liked who I was now. And so did I. What if they find me? It had been 3 months. 3 months since I walked out of their house and left behind the title of mother, maid, and memory. That one morning, I got into my car, same old sedan, but now it felt like a ship, and I drove back to town. Not to speak, not to confront, just to see. I parked 2 blocks away and walked slowly down the sidewalk, scarf pulled high, sunglasses on. It wasn't about hiding. It was about watching without being watched. The house stood exactly where I left it, but different. Now. The shutters were closed tight. The garden, once mine, was overgrown with weeds. The porch swing hung lopsided. The mailbox was stuffed and sagging. And the biggest change of all, a crooked for sale sign stabbed into the front lawn. I stood there for a long time, arms crossed, watching a squirrel dart across the driveway. The wind carried the sound of silence, no laughter, no arguments, no footsteps. They were gone, or maybe just ghosts now. Like I once was. A neighbor passed and gave me a second look, but didn't say anything. I nodded politely and turned away. I didn't need to go inside. I'd already taken what mattered. Back at the cabin, I sat beneath the tall pine tree by the creek, my favorite spot now. The water whispered across the rocks, carrying stories to nowhere. I pulled out my notebook and wrote my final entry. April 22nd, I drove past the house today. It was hollow, like they had tried to fill it with everything except what gave it life: love, respect, kindness. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel smug. I just felt done. And that's the best kind of peace. I closed the notebook and smiled up at the sky. I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't need to be, because I'd made it out of their shadow, out of that house, out of the idea that I was nothing without someone else's approval. I didn't know if David and Claire had split up. I didn't care. Maybe one day, he'd sit alone in some unfamiliar apartment, rereading that letter. Maybe he'd cry. Maybe he wouldn't. That was his journey now. Mine was different. Mine was different. Mine was quiet, strong, unapologetic. I wrote one last note, not in the journal, but on a single sheet of paper I folded and tucked into my coat pocket. You stayed too long, but you left just in time. I whispered it to the wind and let it carry me forward, not as a mother, not as a wife, but as a woman who remembered who she was.